Good morning, and it is not a good morning in New York City.
I just thought, oh my gosh, why are people flying planes into buildings?
A major disaster, a plane crash into the World Trade Center.
I'm going to die, aren't I? No. I'm going to die. Man, say your prayers.
We were afraid for how many other people were going to perish on that day. It was hard to bear.
The violence of 9/11 tore apart families. Fathers and sons. Sisters and brothers. Husbands and wives. Survivors are trapped alive in more than 1.5 million tons of the collapsed towers.
There was death and madness there in that smoke.
Some were reunited.
I have to find them. Whatever it takes, I got to find them.
Others were not.
Let's make sure we bring them home.
But after the towers fell,
people are going to be in this void, just waiting to be rescued.
They would stop at nothing to find their loved ones.
They're trapped. We can't let these people die.
The task was so large, we're never going to get there.
.55 a.m. The upper floors of both towers of the World Trade Center are burning out of control. Hundreds of firefighters are already on the scene. Among them, John Morabito is evacuating civilians in the North Tower lobby.
There's people coming down the stairs. They're crying. Some of them are actually burned. Some of them are bleeding from debris that hit them.
Then, John hears a sound he'll never forget.
It was like someone's dropping some heavy equipment, and it was coming frequently. Boom! Boom!
It's the sound of bodies slamming into the pavement.
People were jumping from the floors above, and now we realized that the situation upstairs was very grim.
With death all around him, John has another pressing concern. He believes that somewhere in all the chaos is his younger brother, Michael. Two blocks south, evacuating 500 students from their building in the shadow of the Twin Towers, is high school principal Ada Dolch.
I tell them, you've got to get into Battery Park. Go find your teacher. Stay with your teacher.
As she guides her students, Ada has another reason to be terrified. Her younger sister, Wendy, works at the very top of the North Tower.
I remember simply saying, you know, God, you got to take care of Wendy because I got to take care of these kids.
Then, the South Tower begins to buckle.
We just start hearing this awful, loud, crackling sound.
I feel a tremendous rush of air. I feel heat. I feel ash. And it's just... I get picked up off the floor, and I'm flying in the air. And I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, God, please save me. I don't want to die.
I turned around and I see this cloud. It was so strong, that wind that came behind you. Felt like it was cutting your neck.
Inside the lobby of the still-standing North Tower.
I'm praying, please help me, please help me. I'm in pitch black darkness. I can hear people screaming in the darkness.
Firefighter John Morabito crawls around for an exit.
Now I'm starting to panic because I can't find my way out.
With the South Tower down, John knows this one could collapse around him at any second.
Okay, I don't know where we are.
Here we go.
A situation that started bad just gets worse and worse and worse. The North Tower is still standing, but the World Trade Center South Tower has collapsed.
In suburban New Jersey, watching the horror unfold on live TV is a pregnant Louise Bazzelli.
It was just so bizarre and so unreal.
Her husband Pasquale is at work on the 64th floor of the North Tower.
Obviously, the two buildings were almost identical, and if that one fell, then, chances are his was going to fall next.
Back in the North Tower lobby, John Morabito scrambles to find a way out. He sees a patch of light.
That's a window. To me, sign from God. Here's a light. Follow the light. You're going to be okay.
He makes his way out of the building and onto the street. Then, the North Tower begins to fall.
Is that the second building of the World Trade Center going down?
Yes, that is the second. That is the second tower. That is the second tower.
I'm screaming to everyone, run, everybody run. And everybody's yelling, and we start running. It's nuclear winter. There's ash everywhere. We can't see anything, and it's total silence.
This has been an absolutely unbelievable morning. The news is breaking almost faster than we can get it to you, and right now,
I watched my husband die right in front of my eyes, and there was nothing I could do to stop any of that.
With the World Trade Center gone, all that remains is a 16-acre swath of destruction known instantly as Ground Zero.
There's a smell of burning in the air and burning wires, and vehicles are on fire. And everybody was just trying to figure out what happened.
At the center of Ground Zero is the pile. Here, more than 1.5 million tons of broken steel beams and twisted rebar stand up to 7 stories high.
It was all gray, and there was smoke coming out of it. It looked like a living, breathing entity.
Firefighters are now on the front lines of a new battle to save potentially hundreds of people buried alive.
That was my first thought. If people made it to the lower levels, they can't get out. They're going to be running out of air, but they're still alive. And our responsibility is saving lives, and that's what we want to do.
The smoking ruins of Ground Zero are the last hope for everyone searching for a loved one.
The odds they're stacked against us, and we're trying to do the best that we could. And we know we have people that are going to be in serious trouble, and we have to get to those people.
For John, the search is personal. One of the firefighters caught in the chaos is his younger brother. And now, John can only assume the worst.
I'm sick to my stomach, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to be able to go home. He's my younger brother. I love him so much. We're such a tight-knit family. How am I going to go home and face him? We're never going to be the same. This is going to tear us apart. It's going to tear the whole family apart.
the World Trade Center is no more. What was there this morning when we woke up is now gone.
The collapse of the Twin Towers killed thousands, but miraculously, some survived, trapped within the pile. 1.5 million tons of steel and pulverized concrete. A brutal obstacle in the search for survivors.
Couldn't see more than halfway down the block. Still that cloud was hanging in the air.
Retired firefighter Lee Ielpi is among those racing to the pile to join the rescue operation.
You could see walking wounded coming at you, fires burning in the smoke.
For Lee, the urgent quest for survivors is all-consuming. He's searching for his eldest son, firefighter Jonathan Ielpi.
My Jonathan, firstborn boy, of course. So special, any dad. 29 years old, married with 2 little boys. Totally dedicated to life, totally dedicated to his kids.
Lee is on the outskirts of Ground Zero when he hears a familiar and ominous sound.
It was a very eerie kind of quiet, except for on the back of our air tanks that we carry. If you stand motionless for 30 seconds, the tone goes off. It's just, and what it does is it signals to me that a fireman is down, unconscious, and he needs help.
Lee knows that one of the emergency signals could be coming from his son.
There was so many going off. It was disturbing.
Lee has another boy on the force getting his own horrifying look at Ground Zero. His youngest son, Brendan.
And 4 or 5 inches of dust everywhere you went. Passing burning cars, things blown over and broken. You never expect to be just passing that like it's nothing. A couple guys still discussing how many firemen are going to be dead. Was it the first, second, or the whole second alarm units?
Brendan knows his big brother is one of those missing firefighters.
I was trying to calculate in my head, all right, when did my brother go? Is he going to be within one of those units? Or did he get here late?
But amid all the chaos and unanswered questions, no one doubts that there are survivors somewhere in the pile.
All of us felt confident that we're going to find a spot where we're going to lift something and the people are going to be in this void, just waiting to be rescued. We got to do this quick.
Lee is on West Street. Here, debris is strewn across an entire city block, cutting off access to the pile. For rescuers, getting to the site is a seemingly impossible task. There's no plan and few resources. They need to do something.
As I turn, there's 3 guys there, construction workers. One guy said, I know where it is, backhoes. I said, get them. He said, I'm going to have to hotwire them, which means he's going to steal them. I looked at him, I said, hotwire them.
It is a scene just not to be believed. The smoke still billowing.
Millions have watched the destruction of the World Trade Center on live TV, including Joanne Hatton in Ridgefield, New Jersey.
I remember going to school to pick up my children, and everybody was asking me, is Lenny there? Is Lenny there? And I said, yes, he's there.
Joanne's husband, Lenny, an FBI agent, was last seen helping with rescue efforts inside the North Tower.
This is the worst day in the history of New York City, and we don't even have the death toll in yet.
I was watching it, my kids were watching it, and all I could think of was the devastation. I told my kids that we would not be hearing from Daddy for quite a while, at least a week or so.
Rescue workers at Ground Zero believe that hundreds of people are trapped alive in voids beneath the collapsed towers, and time is working against them.
Now they're trapped in an area where the smoke is beginning to fill, and there's no fresh air, and we can't let these people die. They speak about the golden hour. If you can get to someone within an hour, there's a better chance that they'll survive.
With the clock ticking, John Morabito is desperately searching for his younger brother, Michael, also a firefighter.
I'm thinking to myself, I gotta find him. Whatever it takes, I gotta find him.
John hangs on to any shred of hope that if his brother survived the collapses, he's still got a chance. But when John sees an official list of missing firefighters, his worst fear is confirmed.
I look at the list and my brother's name is on it. So now I'm really starting to panic.
At that very moment, on the opposite side of Ground Zero, those same feelings of panic consume another firefighter.
I made a decision in my mind that John's probably dead.
Still alive, John's brother, Michael. He too believes his brother is dead.
John's dead, he's gone, and I have to do my job. And if I think about John,
the Port Authority has closed down the Lincoln and Holland tunnels and the George Washington Bridge.
Amid the chaos, officials fear that more terror attacks on Lower Manhattan are coming. High school principal Ada Dolch gathers her students and teachers and tells them to head home.
I said, okay, you live in Queens, you start walking in that direction. I live in Brooklyn, I'm gonna cross the bridge. Whoever wants to go to Brooklyn, follow me.
All the while, Ada knows she's leaving someone behind. Her younger sister, Wendy, a broker's assistant with trading firm Cantor Fitzgerald, who worked at the top of the North Tower. No one's heard from Wendy, but Ada remains hopeful. This isn't the first time her sister's office building has been attacked.
I remembered that back in '93, when we were frantically looking for my sister after that bombing, and then finding out that she'd been shopping all day, I kept saying, oh, she must be shopping.
John Morabito has been working at Ground Zero for more than 2 hours, struggling with the thought of his brother's death. Exhausted, he finally takes a break.
I'm dried out, I'm parched, my eyes are itching because of the dust and the smoke. But I happen to look up, and on West Street, I see a fire hydrant.
Suddenly, he spots a familiar face.
I'm drinking, and I look up. My brother walks in front of me. I'm like, this is amazing. How is this even possible? I jump up, I call out, Mike.
And it was like, oh my God, you're alive.
I got him in my arms, and I love you so much. And I can finally call home and tell them we're both all right. We both made it.
And when I found him, it lifted the weight of the world off my shoulders. So I said, all right, John. I said, you good? You safe? He said, yeah. I said, all right. I have to go back in there. There's other people in there.
Another family of firefighters is also desperate for a reunion at Ground Zero.
And I saw guys I know from Jonathan's house, 288. There was a few of them. So I felt a sigh of relief.
But when Lee Ielpi catches their attention, his hopes for finding his son Jonathan alive evaporate.
They just looked at me and put their heads down. And I knew.
Still, the father sticks with his mission.
You have to stay focused. If you break down, then you're not on track. Okay, let's keep going. Let's just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
At that moment, trapped within the smoldering pile,
Okay, 10-4, North Tower, stairwell, B as in boy.
a survivor opens his eyes. At Ground Zero, rescuers race against the clock to pull survivors from the collapsed towers.
It was all moving and shifting. There was pockets of fire everywhere. Everything was smoldering.
With hundreds of emergency workers dead, there is utter confusion on the ground. Firefighters search the area for survivors without a defined plan.
Go around this way. Around this way.
We really didn't even know where we were going. There was nothing recognizable, just steel. It was just a mess.
Then suddenly, fire department radios crackle to life. They've located the first survivors.
The information we've been looking for all morning is the extent of the casualties from this horrific attack.
25 miles away, family members are gathered at Louise and Pasquale Buzelli's home in Rivervale, New Jersey. Louise is waiting for news of her husband, who was in the North Tower when it collapsed. Pasquale's mother is inconsolable.
She just grabbed hold of my stomach, and she was just crying and said, this baby's got to have a father. This baby's got to have a father, you know. That was probably the worst thing for her to see, was her only son's wife and this big belly, and, you know, he's gone.
Okay, James, one more time. What is your location?
At Ground Zero,
Tower 1, which is the tower. Stairway, B as in boy.
radio messages are coming from within the pile. Trapped emergency workers have made contact with rescuers. The survivors are inside Stairwell B, the only part of the North Tower that's intact. Firefighter Michael Morabito scrambles to get there.
I just was like, I gotta help these people.
This stairwell is a miraculous cocoon for this small group of survivors.
It kind of looked like they ripped the whole building apart and just left this little bit of stairwell. They were like scissor stairs.
Michael thinks even more people might be trapped here. He and another firefighter begin to climb through the unstable remains of the stairwell in search of survivors.
We have no ropes, we have no security, and we're by ourselves. And if both of us go down, we're on our own, and now all of a sudden we become victims.
Michael's instincts are correct. When the men look up, they make a startling discovery.
And he looked at me, he goes, and he just shook his head and he turned and goes, holy guys, he goes, we got a survivor here.
The man Michael sees is Pasquale Bazzelli. Somehow, he rode the tower down as it collapsed.
I just sat up and I said, I'm actually alive. I can't believe it.
He now sits on a pile of rubble next to stairwell B, several feet above the 14 other survivors.
He was just sitting there in the daylight like he was sitting in a park.
But there's a problem. Pasquale is separated from the firefighters by a deep chasm in the pile. And Michael and his team don't know how long they've got to get him out. He could have sustained dangerous internal injuries in the collapse.
So at this time now we're making small talk with him just to keep him calm, because we have to get him across this void.
They realize there is only one way to get Pasquale quickly and safely down. They create a rope harness and put it around him.
I just leaned forward and fell off the edge, and the rope cradle grabbed me.
I took him and swung him right across. The whole time we're talking to him. You're gonna go home to your pregnant wife. You're gonna have a happy life. Don't worry about it.
I just wanted out of there. I was thinking about my wife.
In Rivervale, New Jersey, Louise Bazzelli anxiously waits for any news about her husband.
I didn't want to talk to anyone unless it was him. And I was walking by the kitchen. The phone was ringing at that moment. I said, oh, let me just answer this. So I picked up the phone, and I said, hello.
I said, Louise, it's me.
I said, oh my God, Pasquale. And I said, where are you? Oh my God, are you okay?
I said, I don't know how. I said, I'm alive. She was, when you come home, when you come home. I said, all right. I said, I'll, do my best.
Back at Ground Zero, only 15 people have been pulled out alive from the pile. Rescue efforts are painfully slow, but reinforcements arrive, including Port Authority Police Lieutenant Bill Keegan.
We knew it when it was standing, and we know it now that it's fallen.
Years of working at the World Trade Center have given Bill a unique understanding of its layout. He knows that even now, there are many routes in.
We have all different ways into this site, from underneath or from other directions to the city subways, walking through the tunnels.
But his initial confidence is shaken when he meets a colleague.
He began to tell me some of the names of the people who were some of my best friends that were gone. And I said, maybe they're at the hospital, maybe they're here, and him looking at me like, you don't understand yet. They didn't make it. And I realized then, and right at that moment, that this was different, that this was going to be a very dangerous job.
And the most difficult search and rescue mission in New York's history is about to get even tougher. As he works on the pile, firefighter Brendan Aielpi anxiously watches Building 7. Damaged by debris from the collapse of the towers, it is dangerously unstable.
That whole building was on fire the whole morning. Everybody was still working. Looking up, working, looking up, working. We knew it was only a matter of time.
Just north of where the Twin Towers stood, Building 7 has been burning out of control for more than 6 hours. Finally, it falls.
And it wasn't until somebody said run that I realized that this huge cloud was coming towards me. I ducked in behind a car and then a whole plume of smoke hit me.
For Bill Keegan, this is just the beginning.
It was just as if the pile was still angry. There was still death and madness there in that smoke.
As dusk falls on Ground Zero, only 15 survivors have been found so far. To get to any remaining survivors, rescuers have to crawl through webs of twisted steel and dig into pulverized, heavily compacted concrete.
You get maybe one of the tunnel guys to get in there, we might be able to find somebody.
It's a mammoth effort that calls for huge amounts of manpower. Hundreds of emergency workers have been killed in the attacks. But the solution arrives. People from across the country drop everything to come to Ground Zero and lend a hand.
I grabbed my stuff, loaded the SUV, and headed up the Jersey Turnpike.
Volunteer firefighter Lou Angeli raced more than 120 miles from his home in Delaware to Lower Manhattan.
I was asking the chief, where could we get tools? And he said, tools? He said, here are your tools. And we were just digging by hand at that point.
The easiest method to move the debris, heavy machinery, can't be used. It could crush anyone still alive within the pile. So they quickly devise a solution.
Someone came up with the idea of using 5-gallon buckets. Well, all of a sudden, 5-gallon buckets started showing up.
For Lou and others, the work at Ground Zero is physically and mentally exhausting. But they're driven by one thing, the determination to find any remaining survivors.
I just wanted to keep on digging. I can remember my hands hurting, my arms hurting. We felt we were really doing something that was important.
By sunrise on September 12th, families searching for loved ones have grown desperate. Wild rumors abound that victims are really out wandering the city. They're just too dazed to make their way home. Ada Dolch hangs on to one last hope that her sister Wendy, who worked in the North Tower, might be among them.
The amnesia thing is the thing you keep hanging on to. Maybe she has amnesia. Maybe she's in hospital somewhere. Maybe she's hiding somewhere, in trauma.
In one last effort to find Wendy, Ada posts missing flyers, hoping to gather any information on her sister's fate.
I think that was one of the saddest moments. You really couldn't walk anywhere without seeing just banners and banners of missing people.
At Ground Zero, rescue efforts grow more organized, even as the chances of survival grow more remote.
Find a way to get down to B2, go for it.
And a new and heartbreaking problem demands attention. People begin receiving voicemails from loved ones who were in the towers. Believing the messages are from survivors trapped under the pile, they reach out to Bill Keegan for help.
There's a young girl who calls and says that her father called her. And she said that he's okay, but he's trapped. And he needs help. And you could hear in her voice, she wants us to do whatever.
Keegan and his search team scour the site, but they find no trace of the girl's father. Keegan soon learns why. Technology is playing a cruel trick on the living.
A lot of these people's phone calls had hit the satellite at the same exact time, and what it did was it saturated them. They would send those messages out. But it was 24, 36, 48 hours later from when the phone calls were made.
Delayed by 2 days, they are voicemails from those who died. At Ground Zero, the search for the living is slowly turning into the recovery of the dead. Firefighter Brendan Ielpi has been at Ground Zero since 9/11, searching for his older brother, Jonathan.
We were just getting frustrated. Where the hell could he be? Where are you?
Instead of finding his brother, Brendan finds the remains of others.
I remember we worked on this one person for a while. It was only an arm, but it was a man's hand with his wedding ring. And we were so proud his wife is going to have some type of closure because we found at least something.
But for the Ielpis and other families, Ground Zero is no longer the only place remains might be located. The FBI is now using a former landfill on Staten Island, known, strangely enough, as Fresh Kills. Debris from Ground Zero is shipped and searched a second time here. Agent Jerry Fornino helps run the operation.
We did a job of, by hand, raking, sifting human remains, personal items. It was always our duty that we would give something to any family who lost somebody, that they would stay connected to that family member.
Now for the Iopes, finding some remains of Jonathan is their last hope.
In reality, it was a needle in the haystack. But you had to do something. Something had to be done.
The mission was, no matter what condition he's in, let's make sure we bring him home.
One week after the attacks, hopes of finding any more survivors at Ground Zero are gone. Now, the mission is to recover the thousands of pieces of human remains scattered throughout the site. The pile takes a heavy toll on workers. But in the search for his brother, Brendan Iope stays focused on one thing.
After a while, I think you just became numb to the body parts, to the smell and to all that. Down at the pile, you had one goal, to find my brother.
I can remember my grandson, the oldest was 10, running up to me and saying, Beepot, did you find Dad? Daddy. I said, no, not yet. And he did that every day. Did you find him today? Did you find him? And then after, I don't know, a week or so, he wouldn't ask anymore.
For 89 days, the Iopes keep searching for Jonathan's remains. They find nothing until, on December 8th, a vital clue.
They had found a buddy of his who was working with him that day in the South Tower. Found him in the stairwell and said, well, if he's here, the other guy's got to be here. We got to be close.
Exactly 3 months after 9/11, Jonathan Iope's body is found.
I remember going behind one of the buildings, just pumping my fists. We finally got you. We found you. You could hide, but we got you, buddy. And I said, how could that be a great day? It doesn't make sense. But it was. It was probably one of the greatest days, unfortunately, I think I'll ever have.
In New York City, the company that lost a man out of fire is the company that carries that man out. So in this case, Brendan, myself, and some of the men who were there that night were able to carry Jonathan out of the site and bring him home.
Ada Dolch learns of her sister Wendy's fate. She is one of 658 Cantor Fitzgerald employees killed in the attacks. Ada's family submits DNA samples to authorities in hopes that Wendy's remains can be identified.
How do you begin to bring some closure to this? My mother was a total wreck. We just didn't know what was right, what's not right.
The day after Christmas 2001, they finally get an answer, a call from the coroner's office.
I always say it was no coincidence that the first identifying remain of Wendy were 2 molars. And I would say that's because she had a great big smile on her face. So everyone could see her teeth all the time. So there was no surprise that we found her teeth. I don't know, it just silly, brings a little comfort.
More parts of Wendy's body are recovered, but the repeated calls from authorities only bring pain.
We said, please don't call us anymore. This is not a puzzle to be put together. It's clear that Wendy is not around, so we didn't want to know anymore.
The Iopes and Ada Dolch are lucky. Remains for nearly half of all World Trade Center victims are never identified, leaving their families with nothing.
I knew he was dead. I didn't know what to tell my kids. I was just hoping that they would find him.
Joanne Hatton is among those who have never received remains.
I wish there would be something. I know there won't be.
Her husband, FBI agent Lenny Hatton, was killed in the collapse of the North Tower. But Fresh Kills, the Staten Island landfill, provides some closure. It's here that a melted fragment of Lenny's 9mm service gun is found.
I just remember holding it. There were so many emotions at that time. I really wanted to keep it because it was a part of him. I wanted to keep it so that my children would have a piece of history that day. But at the same time, I had nothing to bury, so that I could make a place for the kids to go to that he would be there, I buried it.
Thousands of workers spend 8.5 months searching for the dead at Ground Zero. Officers from the fire and police departments, Port Authority, as well as construction workers and legions of volunteers. The last piece of steel is removed from Ground Zero, marking the end of the recovery and cleanup effort. The official end of the mission is called in by Port Authority Lieutenant Bill Keegan.
Last piece of steel is heading eastbound on Canal Street towards Kennedy Airport. We're 98, which means we're done. Thank you, Central. Over. Now what?
After the towers fell, tens of thousands of lives were changed in an instant. They and we all faced the same question. Now what?
Thankfully, with God's grace, I not only have my brother, but, proud that he's still a firefighter and that I'm still doing it.
For some, it's about embracing their new lives. 2 months after his miraculous survival, Pasquale Bozzelli and his wife Louise welcomed their first daughter. Her name is Hope.
It was just amazing just to, watch her being born. I was so lucky that I was there to actually see it happen.
For everyone touched by 9/11, it's about finding ways to move on.
It's taken me many years to realize you can't recreate a life that you had. And I'm okay with that now.
You can't let this consume you. So thank God the good Lord made us strong of mind. But get on? You better believe we're getting on. We got to focus on what is the important thing. And the important thing is what's tomorrow.